This episode of the Concierge CPA is brought to you by none other than my own founded company that I am president of, which is TaxPlanIQ. We have released the most major core changes to TaxPlanIQ just recently. And if you've already checked it out in the past or never heard of it before, please do so, because we are automating the creation of a tax plan down to seconds, if not minutes, per taxpayer. And we just reached over $1 billion in tax savings for our users. So we are making a radical change for the profession and for taxpayers alike and the tax literacy space. So check it out.
Welcome to the Concierge CPA. I'm Jackie Meyer, founder of the Concierge Accountant Program and TaxPlanIQ software. This is a podcast for accounting firm owners and influencers who are pursuing world-class service. We discuss their path to excellence, their daily habits, and what influences them and their work. We believe that every person has a unique message that can positively impact the world. Stick around till the end of the show. We'll reveal how you can be our next guest. Let's go, y'all.
Welcome to the Concierge CPA Podcast. I'm Jackie Meyer, your host, as always. I have Paul McManus with us today. He is the CEO and founder of More Clients, More Fun, which is a pretty cool company name. But we're going to be talking about how to publish a book in as little as 6 weeks or as little as a weekend, which Paul did himself. He is the master of book publishing, and I'm really excited to dive in and dig in, hear all his tips and tricks about how to have an amazing, efficient process with that. So welcome, Paul. Tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it. So just brief background. I started my company, More Clients, More Fun, back in 2015. Since then, we found our target audience, or our best target audience, which consists broadly of financial professionals. I'd say about 80% of our clients are financial advisors. The other 20% are CPAs, mostly involved in doing some kind of advanced tax planning, and most all of them are entrepreneurs. And so I love working with financial professionals. I was not a trained financial professional. I'm a trained marketer, but having worked with financial advisors and CPAs over the past 9 years, I feel like I have a PhD in all things, advisory and tax. And so it's just fun to learn, and it's fun to help them take all of their expertise that they've developed over, years and decades, and turn that into, ideally, a compelling book that helps them build their brand and attract their ideal clients to them.
Love it, love it. And funny you mentioned PhD, because I actually just received my doctorate this week in leadership. So, yay me!
Congratulations.
But I'm actually writing a book. I think I mentioned it a little bit to you, but it was for my final doctorate thesis called The Balance Sheet of Life. And so I'm kind of following the traditional publishing method because I really want to get on New York Times bestselling list. And I spent, years on this book, so to speak, through the doctorate. But I was debating whether, to go kind of self-publish. There's the hybrid publishing. Can you explain to our listeners a bit about those different methods and the pros and cons of each?
Yeah. So my company my company is a publishing company, and we focus on helping our clients write and publish what we call a short book. And we get into more detail of that as we go forward. But in terms of what we do, the central premise is that our books are fundamentally used as a business development, marketing, or authority positioning tool. And I say all that because we want the challenge that most of our clients have is that in the marketplace, they're too often perceived as a salesperson. And so the question is how do you flip that script? How do you go from being seen as a salesperson to be more seen as an educator, teacher, et cetera? Sure. And so we've found that authorship is one of the best ways to accomplish that. And so I would say that the kind of books that we primarily focus on helping people write and what you're describing are a little bit different in the sense that, as you alluded to earlier, we help our clients write and publish books in as little as 6 weeks. I wrote my own book in as little as a weekend. And in your case, you've spent, I don't know how much time, but a PhD, et cetera. And the goal is a little bit different.
4 years in the doctorate.
4 years. Yes.
The last year or so, really refining the ideas. So yeah.
Yeah. And I guess what I'll say without getting into like technical definitions is that probably for most people, I think the path that you're on is appropriate for you based on what you're doing and what your goals are. But for your typical person that we work with, what you're doing is what probably scares them away from becoming an author.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is that they think that in order to become an author, that they have to go through this, publishing route. They have to find someone, rigorous process. They have to do all these things. And that's what prevents them from taking the next step, which is that you can do that, and it's appropriate in many cases. I'm sure it's appropriate in your case, but for most people, it's unnecessary. In today's world with things like Amazon and, really, let's just take Amazon. I mean, anyone literally can write a book and upload it to Amazon and literally, claim to be an author in my case, as little as a weekend.
Yeah.
And it's not that we recommend doing it in a weekend.
Sure.
You want to have, quality, you want to have all these things, which is why we help people do this. But, we want to make it where it's accessible to your average person who's not a writer by trade, but sees the value in what I call authority positioning, so that they can get their ideas out there in a bigger way. They can do more speaking. They can speak on the topic. They can spread their message. But ultimately, what the goal is that they can attract more easily their ideal clients to them.
Yeah. So the way that you've kind of described to me and others in the past that makes a lot of sense is that you're essentially kind of telling every potential client the same spiel, right? And so by them being able to pick up your book, read it before even meeting you, and understand the nuances or your thought leadership process and really feel like they know you better, that just really solidifies that relationship, and to where it doesn't even have to really become a sale. It's more about, are we the right fit kind of thing, right?
That is 100% it. I'll break down my process a little bit in terms of how I do it, and then by extension, how I coach my clients to do it.
Okay.
Is that I am by no means a natural salesperson. I'm an introvert. I can sell, but I don't, I want to conserve my energy for the most part.
Yeah.
And I'm also, the rainmaker for my company, right? So how do I put all those objectives together? So my process is I simply market my book and do podcasts like this. I speak at events, and that becomes the message where people find out about me, and if they're interested, they come and they talk. Especially if it's online, typically someone will schedule a 15-minute call with me, which, 15 minutes I'm happy to do with someone energetically, right?
Sure.
But what happens is one of two things. Either A, before they schedule that call, they've already read my book. So to your point, they already know enough about me, they know enough about my process, and they're already predisposed to want to move forward. And at this point, they have some questions, right? So, is this a good fit? How much does it cost? Things of that nature. How long does it take? How much time, et cetera. The other scenario is that someone, hears about what I do. They come to me, they haven't read my book, and I make a determination, okay, they don't yet know enough about me. Now, without a book, what would happen? Well, you'd probably schedule another meeting. You'd go through a presentation. Your close rate might be whatever it is, and you're spending a lot of time in quote unquote what I call sales. Now, in my case, if I determine that they don't know enough about me yet, it's a very simple task. I say, hey, would you be open to, I'm going to send you a copy of my book. It takes about an hour to read, and we can schedule another meeting. And before that next meeting, can I ask you to read it? And they either say yes or no, and 80% say yes. They show up at the next meeting, and guess what happens? I don't need to present. They're already excited. They have some questions. They have logistical questions, but my quote unquote close rate at that point is 80% or better.
Nice.
And so that to me, when we talk about authorship from my vantage point, it's really more about what I would call authority positioning or authority marketing. And it's a very simple concept, but it's how do you go from chasing to attracting? How do you go from trying to sell to people, quote unquote, selling you on why they're a good fit for you?
Sure.
I mean, it's really just flipping that script. And so, and I'm probably getting a little bit off topic here, but I'm on a roll. feel free to interrupt. But ultimately, it's a tool, and it's just that our society respects authors. I mean, our society respects speakers, and our society respects authors. There's something about that where the person that's brave enough to go speak in front of a room, or the person that's brave enough to spend the time and write a book and put their name on it, those are the people that we're naturally influenced by. And in my experience, what I've observed is that when you combine speakership and authorship, it becomes what I would say is a 1 + 1 = 3 activity. And I know for any CPA listening to this, like, that math does not work out, but I'm telling you, it's 1 + 1
Yeah, I'm
=
gonna start
3.
getting hate mail. Like, don't,
and authorship.
No. I'm sure they love the idea, though, of not having to sell, because CPAs in particular and accountants, that's like the worst part of their job. Financial advisors are kind of expected to have that flair, right? So,
well, it is, and 100%. And I would add to that. So I'd agree with that assessment, and I would say that in both cases, the CPA wants to avoid having to sell. The advisor is more naturally inclined to sell, but they also are probably frustrated by the amount of time that they're spending in sales conversations that don't go anywhere. So they're, even if they have, a bunch of appointments, they're not happy with their close rate typically. So, most people think that to write a book, I don't have the time, right? I don't have the time to write a book. I'd love to write a book. It's on most people's bucket list,
right.
but I don't have the time. And I'm here to say that it's actually a tremendous time saver. And I kind of went on that example I shared before, I guess, along this thought line, was that once you've completed the book and you have it as part of your marketing and sales process, it saves you so much time in wasted effort that it's like immediately you're like, okay, what's my next book going to be about, right? It's like,
Sure.
What's my next topic going to be about? And so it's ultimately about attracting better clients, the right fit clients, and it's about saving a tremendous amount of time and attracting the people that want to work with you. And, and the other side that people don't talk about, it's also repelling the people that you don't want to work with, right? So by being authentic and really sharing about who you are, what you stand for, et cetera, you're going to have one of two reactions. I like this person, I want to get to know them better, or I don't like this person, I don't want to get to know better, and both are good, right?
For sure. Yeah, I agree. I don't want to waste anybody's time, and everybody's not for everybody. So the book that you wrote in the weekend, is that the one that you tell potential clients to read? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I have it. So here, I have it right here. I don't know if it's gonna show up because I have a little Zoom filter, but it's called the Short Book Formula. It's not showing up properly, but this is
worries.
Yeah, this is my go-to book. I published this in the beginning of 2023, I believe.
Okay, awesome.
So it's been over a year and a half, and I want to say that I spent a weekend writing this and publishing it just because I was so clear on what I wanted to do. And, I put in, 2 full days on the weekend and got it out. To be candid, the process that we take our clients with is usually 6 weeks to do that, but it can definitely be done in as little as a weekend if you're motivated to do so.
Sure. Okay, awesome. And what does that process look like when you're working with a client?
Yeah. So we start from the premise that our typical client is not a writer, but that they have a lot of experience. They have stories, they have experience, they have ideas that they want to express. From there, we have a very structured process, and this is where the 6 weeks comes in, where we start by doing, 6 one-hour Zoom calls spread out over 6 weeks, and that's really where the 6 weeks comes in versus a weekend.
Okay.
And before each call, we give our client an assignment. It's about 1 to 2 hours. and they come prepared for the call. But in essence, we have them talk out the content for the book. We help them structure it. We help them do all those things. We facilitate the conversation. We give feedback. We pull out that information in a variety of ways. But what you have at the end of it is the first 4 calls are collecting content. And from there, we collect all that content and we write the first draft of the book based on those first 4 calls. But here's I think the real secret is that, like in anything, if you just do a quote unquote first draft and publish, it's probably not as good as it could be, right? It's always in that refinement process that something goes from good to great. And so then once they have the first draft, we spend the next 2 calls actually doing what's called developmental editing and have them give us their feedback. Okay, what do you like? What do you want to change, et cetera? And we spend 2 more calls with them, really trying to fine tune it in such a way that by the time we publish it, they're like, that's me, that's my voice. I want to get this message out into the world because I know that this is going to make a difference.
Love it. Okay. Yeah, that I hired an editor for my book just to kind of hold me accountable and keep me on track. But then also, as an accountant by trade, I'm very practical, logical, the way that I write. And she just asked questions that kind of pulled the more emotional aspect out, or more stories that I wouldn't naturally have thought of on my own. And so that was really helpful. So I can see how that would be a good process.
I would add to that, if I may.
Sure.
That's the thing, is that oftentimes, we as experts in our own stuff, we forget how much we've learned. We forget how things that we are. And it really takes that outside third party, such as a coach, to really draw the best ideas out and to give that objective feedback, right? I would say it's also to give confidence, because I think one of the biggest challenges that a lot of people have when it comes to writing is what's known as imposter syndrome. It's like, who am I to write a book? Who am I to say this? And it's so common. I mean, I think we all go through it to one degree or another, but it's like one of the biggest obstacles that people have to writing a book. And when you have someone in your corner, so to speak, and say, no, you've earned the right to say this. You have experience, we need to capture this, and sometimes be vulnerable. It makes such a difference in terms of what actually ends up on the page.
Awesome. Okay. And what does the cost look like to go through a process like this?
Yeah, so for us, we have a couple different tiers, depending on the goals of the book. But typically, it's on the lower end, it's $9,000, and on the upper end, it's $18,000.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Okay, cool. So tell me a little bit about some of your favorite authors that you worked with and helped them produce books.
Yeah. So, well, I'm going to bring up one, that's near and dear to probably both of our hearts. So, I'm holding it.
Yeah. I was definitely going to mention that. So, Anton Anderson has The Art of Collaboration. Paul helped him with that book, and he released that just about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago or so.
It was, yes. So I'll share the background on this. So, so Anton Anderson and Paul Latham, and maybe if I can, I mean, you wrote the foreword on this, so
I did.
I mean, I know it's your podcast, but I'm gonna flip the script on you if I may. And from your perspective, what is the art of collaboration?
Oh gosh,
to
me, it's about bringing together 2 of your most trusted and lucrative advisors in the financial world, which is your financial advisor and the accountant, and how they can work together as a team and have a positive relationship versus all of the junk that you think happens, which it's true. They tend to butt heads. When you talk or one has an idea, the other one can get defensive versus being collaborative. And so Anton has, a wonderful program for financial advisors and accountants with the elite resource team. I was honored to keynote at his conference a couple months ago about this topic and how imperative I think it is for the future of both of our professions.
Yeah, I'll add 100%, and I'll just add a little color to this. Hopefully this will be okay, but just a little behind the scenes. And so,
sure.
Anton and Paul Latham, I don't know how long they've worked together, but it's been a while. And of course, Anton is a financial advisor by trade, and Paul Latham is an accountant by trade. And of course, you have your typical advisor slash CPA or accountant personalities. But they're business partners. They're like, we're going to write this book together. And the through line is that everything worked out well and we have a great book that everyone's happy with. But the process, it's like it really demonstrated the art of collaboration because because what you just said in terms of, different ideas and butting heads and different visions, we saw that play out in real time throughout the course of this book. And so it was quite interesting. And I really have to hand it to Anton in that he really has, I would say, mastered the art of collaboration and was able to make this a successful book, which I may add the event that you mentioned. One of the questions that comes up a lot is that, okay, if I write a book, I don't want to then just like have my mom read it and, I spend all this time and energy and it doesn't do anything for me, right?
Yeah.
And so the question is, okay, well, what do I do with the book? How do I market it? How do I do this? And I love just using, again, Anton as the example, is that we intentionally got the book ready for him in time for his event that we were both at, just because, he was having hundreds of people there. And it goes back to that idea of, speaking plus authorship is a 1 + 1 = 3 activity. And I just loved how he leveraged the book throughout the event. I mean, he gave out copies, he did an author signing, he, used it throughout his presentation. And so, all of those things, when you infuse it with what you're already doing from a marketing standpoint, it's just super powerful.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think it came together really well. But I remember him joking in one of his speeches at the conference was about some of the things that they butted heads about and how Paul thought it was like the worst book ever in the middle of it. And Anton's like, it's going to be okay. And yeah, it all worked out. So it's definitely a great example. Okay, so besides Anton, who will actually be on the podcast in a couple of weeks, I think, what are some of your other favorite authors you've worked with?
Yeah, so I'll share one example. I'll share another example. His name is Mark Miller. We helped him a couple of years ago write a book called The Tax-Free Business Owner. And so in his case, he does a lot of advanced tax planning. And he wanted, and so when he first came to us, he wanted our help in helping him market on LinkedIn. And, that's a service that we do as a marketing agency. But what we've found over the years is that when you do any kind of cold outreach, especially to a more affluent client base or more affluent prospects, the last thing that anybody wants is to be pitched. Sure. And, especially on LinkedIn, I mean, I'm sure we all have the experience of getting, it's like, hey, let's jump on a call. And it's like, I don't even know who you are, right? Mm-hmm. And so our approach that we've developed over the years, and with Mark specifically, is that we start with a book that's designed to appeal to the audience that you want to attract and get their attention. So again, the tax-free business owner, and I'm going to mess up the subtitle, but it's how business owners can legally pay zero taxes, right? So, as a business owner, I see that, I'm like, okay, interesting, right? I might be skeptical, but interesting. But part of it is, okay, well, part of our marketing strategy at that point is that, okay, get a free copy, right? And we can deliver either a free digital copy. We can, in some clients' cases like Mark, we can, they're willing to spend, a whopping $4 to have it go out through Amazon and deliver it. But the end result is that you target the people that you're trying to target, who are typically affluent people. You get their attention, but then before, having any, phone conversations, et cetera, Zoom calls, you deliver the book, you give them a chance to read and be exposed to your ideas. And ultimately, the next step for them is that they self-select, and then they take the next step and schedule. And so I've worked with so many financial advisors and CPAs over the years, doing a lot of, variety of marketing, including, a lot of LinkedIn. And, for many people, the quote unquote close rate is abysmal. I mean, in any cold marketing, it's to get someone, it's not just their attention, but to get them to say yes to your quote unquote offer. It's like really low, for most people. But what I love about this example with Mark is that in his own words, when people scheduled the first call as a result of getting his book and then scheduling, assuming that they were qualified, he closed them at 80%, which is just phenomenal.
From a cold lead, you're saying.
From a cold lead, and these are people that are strangers. These are not referrals. These are not warm people. These are strangers.
That's pretty amazing.
It's incredible because I've seen the numbers across the board, and so that's the kind of those are the kinds of results that just light up my day. Just get me excited because I've seen the other side, which is I've had 20 appointments and I don't have any new clients. And I mean, that's like, soul crushing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just like myself, it's like when someone schedules a call on my calendar, assuming that they're qualified, my numbers are the same. It's, 80% move forward. And that makes me excited and want to do more and to grow my business and invest the time in all these different things. And so, Mark Miller, again, tax-free business owner, and it's about, and I guess the through line is that when you have a message and a specific audience in mind, and the book is written from their point of view, it can do wonders for your client attraction and conversion.
Yeah. So let's unpack that a little bit more. So what do you recommend with someone if they have this book? Was he just literally sending cold DMs on LinkedIn? Was he putting social posts about the book and then offering it for free? What was like that winning formula for him?
Yeah, so for us, and what we tend to do is on LinkedIn, social posts are only get you so far, unless you're
it's
actually
quote unquote pretty saddening how poorly they convert, right?
They're terrible. I mean, they do not convert is the bottom line, and that's what a lot of people think social media is I'm going to post, and then they get disappointed because nothing happens, right? So. Mm-hmm. The strategy that we've refined and do for clients, for the past 8-9 years is we tap into LinkedIn just because it's a great database of professionals and business owners, and you can really segment who you want to target. But from there, what we found works the most effective is direct messaging. And so this is, using a combination of automation software and messaging to get a response. Going back to what I was saying earlier is that what people tend to not like is just, from like a sales, someone that from someone that they don't know and saying, hey, I'm so-and-so and I want to get on, let's schedule a call and get to know each other.
I gave up LinkedIn for like a couple years because I was just bombarded with these like cold DMs. And I finally got back in like the beginning of this year. I started getting more active and I'm so glad I did because there's so many cool people on there. But yeah, the DM experience can be a little overwhelming.
It can be overwhelming, and that's where you have to think through, okay, well, how can we make this work, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where our approach has become over the last number of years is, okay, let's start with that. Let's start with the value. Let's get super specific in terms of who we want to target. Let's then create the marketing collateral, in this case, a book that speaks directly to the kind of person we want to attract. And the call to action, at least initially, is not let's schedule a call. The call to action is, can I give you it's like, hey, I'm the author of the Tax-Free Business Owner. I'm just making this up on the spot, but if taxes are a concern, I'd love to send you a complimentary copy of my book. Basically getting their permission so that, again, curiosity. A lot of this is led by curiosity, but you get a lot of complimentary copy of the book.
And
that sounds interesting.
Helping them identify and reach out to people on LinkedIn.
Identify, reach out.
Wow, that's a really awesome level of service to provide there.
And it's all about, because I think when it comes to writing a book, part of it is a lot of people think in terms of autobiography, like, okay, my life story. Now, let's be honest, unless you've accomplished something, you've reached something, you've done something, like really rarefied things, most people don't, from a marketing perspective, most people don't care about your autobiography, right?
Sure.
They want to get to know you in the context of their own, what's in it for me, right? And so going back to Mark, for example, the tax-free business owner, it starts by identifying the reader, talking about their problems, showing them the transformation that they can potentially have from paying too much in tax to potentially zero taxes. And through that, we weave the story of the author. So we build personal relationship, we build brand identity, we build all those things so that by the end of it, the reader feels that they know the author, but it's done in such a way that's 100% focused on the goals, problems, and desires of the ideal reader. And so when you have that level of clarity in your messaging, then your marketing outreach, especially cold marketing, which is always difficult, becomes that much easier because you just have crystal clarity in your message and it's delivered from your ideal prospects or ideal reader's point of view.
Sure.
Whereas the mistake that a lot of people make, it's like, it's more me focused, right? It's like,
Right.
I want to sell life insurance. How do I make life insurance appealing? It's just as a random example.
Yeah. So have you seen or do you ever recommend that people kind of pre-sell their book? I know the process is pretty quick with you. Have you seen that be successful, or people selling workshops around their books if they're offering training and consulting and things like that?
I highly recommend taking the book and leveraging it in as many different aspects as you can. So let me give you a couple examples from how we help people.
Okay.
Specifically, one of the things that we help our clients with, because we primarily publish to Amazon, is that we help them get #1 bestseller status.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna get to that question because I'm sure that's what everyone wants to know. How do you do that, right? But we'll circle back to that for sure.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things. We're not as much focused on selling or pre-sales or selling the book from the standpoint of is that the books that we help people write, it's not about creating royalties per se. It's about creating a tool that then attracts their ideal clients. And so although, you can make some royalties, it's not the goal of it.
Sure.
I guess I would reframe the question into pre-promotion.
Okay.
In that part of what I try to instill in people in terms of the marketing is that you want to make a big deal about it. This is unlike anything else that you've done, especially if you haven't published before, in that people are naturally predisposed to get excited about someone becoming an author. I'll tell a really quick story. Back in 2019, I decided to write my first book, and I started backwards in the sense that I created a book cover before I wrote the book.
Oh,
and
wow.
I posted it on social media, and I got all this praise, like, wow, congratulations. That's so cool. You're so smart, right? I mean, essentially. And it satiated me. So it took me another year before I actually wrote the book because I was so, I was like, wow, that's really cool. People, think that I'm special, right? And that's just meant to be a humorous aside. But the point is that as soon as you decide to write a book, you want to make a big deal about it throughout the process. Hey, I'm writing a book. You want to engage your client base. You want to engage your email list. You want to tell them what you're doing. You want to get feedback. You want to involve them. There's a quote that I like, which is that people support a world that they help build. So the more that you can engage them, the more you turn them into kind of indifferent, perhaps to active fans, active advocates for your business. And so the more that you can do throughout that process, the better. And I think there was another part of the question that I missed or I didn't answer.
Well, so I asked about kind of like pre-sales. So you're saying promotion. That's great. Workshops, like offering training, speaking. I'm sure people get asked to speak off of their authorship and whatnot.
Yeah, 100%. And this is what I really love about becoming an author is that it becomes your passport to so many more speaking engagements. What's the biggest challenge? Well, just to have some fun, I'll ask you, what do you think is the biggest challenge for, someone to invite a speaker to speak? I mean, what's like,
Probably
what
just
stops?
not knowing they exist.
Not knowing they exist, absolutely. But secondly, it's vetting them. It's how do we know that this person's going to make us look good?
Where's the credibility? Okay.
Where's the credibility? And it immediately positions you as an author, teacher, educator. It gives people something that they can even look at, read, and vet, do their due diligence on, etc. And so, especially if you're looking to create more speaking opportunities, being an author, I would say, is probably the #1 way to create more and more frequent and better speaking opportunities.
Okay.
And then to your other question, then what I love about authorship is that what is it really? I mean, it's your ideas, it's taking the time to frame out your ideas, your message, the value that you bring, the problems that people face, etc. And you're creating a framework. And in authorship, you're delivering it through a book. But what do you really have? You have a core message that can be used in multiple ways, including speaking, including workshops, including all these different things. And so I 100% believe that you should take the work that you've done in the book and amplify it in as many different ways as you can, including speaking, including workshops, including all these different things.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, that totally makes sense. All right. So we've talked about a couple of authors that you like. I know I have several TaxPlanIQ users, especially with this partnership that we've had with Anton and Elite Resource Team, that have become authors. And I can't remember the last one I saw, but I remember it hit bestseller just a few weeks ago, and I was really, really excited for them. How do you become an Amazon bestseller?
It's now, a magician should never reveal their secrets, right?
Okay.
And I say that partially, joking, partially not joking, in the sense that, once before the magician reveals their secrets, it's like, wow, that's so cool. And then they reveal their secret. They're like, oh, that's it. So I'm going to hold that one in suspense. But
I have heard. So I'm putting together a book proposal right now to find a literary agent and whatnot. And Jordan Raynor, one of my favorite authors, who was actually the very first person I interviewed on my podcast. So shout out to Jordan. He has this really cool online workshop that I'm taking that was very quick on how to write a book proposal and whatnot. And he had a lot of really good tips and tricks. He mentioned that pre-orders do help count towards that kind of first week of sales. Is that true?
Yeah. So from my experience in doing this, there's a few different ways. And one of the ways is to do a pre-order so that people can essentially I think the point of it is that the way that you become number one is that you get as many people as possible to buy the book. And so how do you do that? Oftentimes, if you have a bigger email list, more influence, podcast, whatever it is, you tell people in advance, hey, I'm writing my book. Hey, we're releasing on this day. We're pre-releasing it, and you incentivize them to buy during a window of time, right? So the goal is that you're incentivizing people to make purchases within a very specific window of time. And so I think that's primarily where the pre-orders come in, is to kind of corral people so that they take action and that you can amplify the purchases during that time. What I've found when it comes to Amazon is that what it really matters most in terms of hitting number one is that it's the number of unique purchases on a specific day.
Oh, within one particular day, huh?
Yep. And so this is important because I discovered this through trial and error, because they don't disclose this per se, is that I've done it both ways. The idea about pre-orders is that you want to corral people, you want to market it, you want to promote it,
sure,
you want to get everyone to do it. But at the end of the day, in terms of hitting number one, it's how many books were sold on a single day. And you can't quote unquote game the system in the sense that you can't go and buy 50 copies of your own book. I mean, I've tried it, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, I've tried this, but it only counts as it only counts as one, right?
Oh, darn.
Yeah, no, exactly. So it's like everyone could be a bestseller then, right? I'm just going to buy 5,000 copies of my book. No, it's you actually have to get, let's say, 50 different people or 100 different people or 200 different people, whatever the number is for the category that you want to become number one in. And there's competitiveness, right? So some categories are more competitive, some categories are less competitive. And so if you choose a category that's more competitive, the trick is that you have to get enough unique people to purchase your book, and ideally on a single day, and that's what takes it up to number one.
Okay. That's really, really interesting for sure. And I know I don't think, even like New York Times bestsellers, they don't really release how that happens, right? But it's probably a similar thing, right?
It is. I haven't helped people myself do it, but I've worked with and seen behind the scenes of enough people, and I think even in those cases, I mean, oftentimes, authors are buying their own books to try to amplify their sales, but they do a lot of marketing in terms of encouraging their email list and people that they have influence over to buy their book in a given amount of time. I think the trick is that once you become number one bestseller, it's easier to do it again, but it's how do you get there in the first place? And I think for a lot of people, it's ultimately marketing and how do you game the system a little bit so that you can get to number one. I'm not saying that that's everybody, but I think there's a lot of that regardless of the list, whether it's New York Times, whether it's Wall Street Journal, whether it's Amazon. I think the exception to that might be like if you're like a true celebrity, you're like I'm just going to throw out some names like an Obama, Hillary, a Trump, someone that's everybody knows. At that point, you're just going to go to number one because you have that name recognition.
Okay.
But for your average bear, it does take some finessing to get it. And then once you get it, then you can leverage it, and it's easier to get it the second and third time if you're pursuing that.
Sure. Okay. So, would you call yourself a traditional publisher or a hybrid publisher? And what's the difference between those two?
Yeah. I think there's technical definitions. I guess I wouldn't call myself either per se, or at least I don't think of myself that way.
Okay.
We're a publisher. I guess the best way to think about what I do is that we help facilitate people almost self-publishing their books, but we take them from start to finish. But ultimately, because we publish them on Amazon, they have complete rights and control over their book, right? And so we're a publishing company, but really it's to facilitate them to first write the manuscript, to do all the things that are necessary for publishing a book, from book cover to the layout to all those different things, to then getting it published, to then getting it on number one, to then talking through, okay, how we're going to market this. And so I guess I don't think of myself in those more traditional terms of kinds of publishers.
Okay.
If anything, I would think of myself a little bit more as a marketing agency.
Okay. Yeah. Babysitter kind of comes to coach and babysitter, because that's kind of what you really need to do such a long haul project like this.
It 100% is, as much as we try to do parts of it for the client to make it easy for them, at the end of the day, it's a lot of coaching and a lot of, getting people committed to a process and showing up and doing their homework and doing all these things. And so it's almost like project management from one angle, but yeah, it's something that it's a long-term project, not just to get the book done. That can be done within 6 weeks, but ultimately it's what do you do with the book, right? Once you have it, how do you market, how do you promote it? And ultimately our goal is to work with clients for the long haul, so that they can use a book to build their business. And then the other part of that, and this is part of the short book formula, is that we believe in not just writing the first book, but once you see the power of it is in writing multiple books, because the more narrow and focused your book is, the more effective it's going to be. And as you see that giving your business benefits, then suddenly it's okay, what's my next book going to be about? And so we're ultimately trying to work with clients long-term to help them build their businesses.
That's great. Okay. So they invest, between those two tiers with you, but then they essentially keep all the royalties and they have the full rights to all of it. So that's kind of, I guess, how I would describe the difference between self-publishing, where you have to absorb all the costs yourself, but you're not necessarily paying someone else to do it.
Right.
And then the hybrid method, which is where you're kind of investing a fee, but there might be some kind of rights involved. And then the traditional method, you're not investing anything up front, but you only get 15-20% of the royalties on the back end kind of thing.
Yep.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now I have so many more questions for you, but I want to hone in on a few things that are kind of important to me. One kind of totally random off topic here, but I have to bring up is women in writing. and how few there are, especially in the business arena. Have you seen that with your audience and your clients? Is it mostly male dominated, and why do you think that is?
Because I work primarily with financial advisors, I think my clients simply reflect the industry. And so just give you some, as examples, if 80% of advisors and CPAs are male, I'm not saying that's the number, but if that was the case, then we would naturally work with, people that come to us are going to probably be 80% male, right? But we also have a lot of females that come to us. I mean, I'm just at the conference, the Elite Growth Academy that we were both at recently. I can remember any number of conversations with female advisors or CPAs that some signed up with us, others are interested in.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I guess from my own perspective, I don't see any lack of opportunity or disparity. It's just a matter of it just reflects the audience that we're engaged with. We do have, I guess currently I have 4 book coaches. 3 are female, 1's male. And so, it's just always interesting to get a different perspective, whether it's gender or other things in terms of the writing process.
Yeah. I think one of the things that first inspired me to write this business book that I'm doing, last year at Scaling New Heights, there was this huge uprising controversy about Ed Kless and Ron Baker being a keynote and them naming all their favorite business books. And it was 100% male dominated. And so people were upset at them, which, I mean, we all, I understand all the perspectives of it. I see both sides. But when you really look into it, there's not that many female business authors, and especially female business authors that are speaking to anybody. You've got the pink cover female business authors that are meant just for women, right? And so I wanted to make sure, sorry, I'm getting passionate. I want to make sure that I spoke to anybody, any entrepreneur, because I have a story to tell just like anybody else that could be heard and absorbed and help anybody else, right?
Yeah.
And so I know Ed really well, and I didn't blame them whatsoever because I think there's just a lack of female business authors. And so I was just thinking through like the reasons for that and whatnot. And I don't really know the answer myself, but I was just curious, if you had a perspective on that.
Well, as you're talking, I'm developing a little bit of a perspective as you're talking. So one in I'm just kind of thinking on the spot here, but I'm recalling back to some of the conversations that we had at the Elite Growth Academy, and one of the common themes, not necessarily everybody, but one of the common themes that I heard from some of the female the women who spoke to us that were interested in the book was fairly consistently they talked about wanting to write a book for women. And that wasn't us implanting the idea. That was them coming to us and say, hey,
nothing against that whatsoever. I think there are things that are really important for women by women. I was just coming from a third perspective of I can help anybody with what I personally have to say, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was going to say, because I caught you saying that, is that in your case, what I heard you say is that you want to write for everybody, regardless of male or female. And so because of that, I think that that's going to be your audience, obviously, is that you're going to attract an audience of people regardless of gender, it sounds like. And so if I, just in terms of perspective, I haven't thought much about this. And so I'm just thinking off the cuff.
Sure.
But maybe one of the reasons is that if more women write for women, then you're going to naturally see fewer women that appeal to a broader audience. Is just my hypothetical.
That is interesting. Yeah, I'll have to go back and kind of look at the statistics around that and see how that comes together.
Because conversely, and I'm probably getting myself in trouble as I keep talking, but I'm just going to dig this hole a little bit deeper.
Okay.
I've never had a man come to me and say, I want to write a book for men.
Yeah.
Never. I mean, they always assume that it's a broad audience. Sometimes the men come and say, I want to write for women, but it's never, I want to write a book for men.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, no, that's really interesting perspective. I appreciate that. So when I was researching, like finding a literary agent and publisher and whatnot, I was looking at some of my favorite authors, and most do that traditional route. Alex Hormozy did
Hmm.
self-publishing based on just his popularity, which I was like
Yeah,
amazed at
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But that's not that common, right? To be able to fully just self-publish without having an audience and whatnot. How much do you think it impacts the author as to if they already had that audience or not?
So that's a great question. I think whether you're self-publishing or looking for a traditional publisher, so if you're looking for a traditional publisher, what they want by and large is that you have that audience because that's going to make their job easier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately, even though they're helping you through the process and they're doing things for you, and maybe they're giving you an advance, at the end of the day, they're relying on you and your name recognition and ability to get in front of crowds and promote the book in order for it to be profitable for them.
Sure.
Um, and so taking Alex Hormozy as an example, he's someone that has built his own audience, very, popular audience, lots of lists, et cetera. And so he would completely have the option to, go and get published through so-and-so. And probably if he did that, it's probably more for credibility and prestige.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's looking at his book from just, I want to, get my message out there and, use this to build my brand and my business, there's probably no reason why he would need to go through a traditional publisher, just because he has the capacity based on his popularity to get his book and make a big message and get it out there in front of a lot of people. And so at the end of the day, I think the through line is that whether it's traditional or not, the more quote unquote popular you are, the more of an audience you have, the more name recognition you have, it's going to always be easier. And I think it just matters about what your goals are and which one, serves your goals better.
Sure. Okay, awesome. So, okay, I have about one or two more questions, but we got to wrap up. So, first of all, I have to plug Tim Ferriss, who's written a ton of great books, and he's done everything from self-publishing to traditional methods, and his blogs and whatnot speaks so much to why you should do one method or another. So if people are interested in that, I would definitely check that out. Tim Ferriss, The 4-Hour Workweek, one of my favorite books.
Yeah.
Final question for you. What AI tool is going to save people hours upon hours upon hours of time by utilizing it to help them write?
Yeah. I'll give you the short answer, and if you want explanation, I'll give it to you. I know we're out of time almost, but the tool that I'm using most heavily today, and that's the best, it's called Claude.ai. Claude.ai. It's by a company called Anthropic. They have a few different models, but the one that they released, I want to say a month or so ago, it's called Sonnet 3.5. So that model is by far the best when it comes to writing. And at the same time, what I love about AI is that as good as it is today, tomorrow it's going to be 10 times better. And so it's like, it's just, you got to keep up with it. But Sonnet 3.5, which is part of Claude.ai, is by far the most useful tool today.
Yes. And Paul recommended it to me. I've been using it myself for blogs or articles and whatnot, and it is like night and day. I've been using ChatGPT since 3.5, and we're what 5 versions after that now. Honestly, the writing has gotten a bit blander and blander as they put in different restrictions on the OpenAI tool. Claude still has that pizzazz and personality and customization to your voice that you can do. So,
well, if I can briefly add, I think it does a great job in being able to mimic your voice. And so if you can train it, like, this is what I sound like, these are samples of my writing, I want you to write like me, it does a phenomenal job of then mimicking you.
Yeah. Now for research, and I already use ChatGPT for pretty much all my search tools. So it's already replaced Google for me. That's going to be your best bet because it will go browse the internet and find articles, bring them back in. Claude still has limitations there, but for the writing specifically, it is top notch for sure.
If I can throw one more out, another one is Perplexity.ai. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it to me and I started looking into it, but I was so impressed with Claude that I just kind of ran with it. What is it that shines with that one?
Yep. So Perplexity.ai. So to your point, I'm starting to use ChatGPT more for search, than Google, just because I just type a little question and it gives me the answer versus having to get a bunch of links.
Right.
So I like ChatGPT for like low level searches, but if it comes more to like a research standpoint where I really want to trust the sources and get links and all these other things, Perplexity.ai, I think today is the best when it comes to research, not to writing, but to research.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate it. I hope everyone got some really great tips and tricks. And for now, we got to sign off. Here's the Concierge CPA saying goodbye. Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Concierge CPA, hosted by TaxPlanIQ. We believe that every person has a unique message that can positively impact the world. If you are a successful accounting firm owner or influencer who would like to be on this program, please visit JackieMeyerCPA.com, JackieMeyer CPA.com to apply. Please share this on social media and rate us so we can continue our good work. Join our Facebook group called Accounting Firm Influencers, or connect with me on most platforms under Jackie Meyer CPA. Thanks for being accountable to transforming our industry today.